Hi, my name is Leah Buechlev. I'm a professor at the MIT Media Lab, where I lead a group called High-Low Tech. And today what I'm going to talk to you about is kind of the technology DIY community and gender, and kind of it connects tangentially also to fashion. I wanted to start by kind of returning to this thing that Kevin brought up this morning, which relates to my talk in a couple of ways. So I wanted to begin this talk with some disclaimers, so two of them. The first is that most of the work that I'm going to talk to you about is really old, and so I have a bit of this feeling like, oh yes, I can talk about that work, but I've been talking about it for a long time, and probably at least some of you already know the work that I've done in this space. So there's a bit of that in this talk, just kind of old stuff. And then the other part of this talk is super, super new stuff that's like, I would say maybe worse than half-baked, maybe like quarter-baked or eighth-baked. So some stuff that we're just starting to think about in my group and that's not really ready to talk about, but I think is interesting and especially relevant to this context. So, so with that being said, let me forge ahead, and hopefully this will still be worthwhile. Okay, so let me start by giving you some context about what I do with my group at the Media Lab. So my foundational interest is developing new technologies that give rise to new communities. And more specifically, I'm interested in developing tools that empower diverse groups of people to create technology for themselves. And I work specifically in the domain of hardware, so interested in involving people in building their own physical technologies. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is a project that I've been working on for a while. It actually came out of my PhD research. It's a project called LilyPad Arduino. And what this is a kit for building interactive fashion. So this kit consists of a set of sewable electronic modules that you can stitch into your clothing with conductive thread, and then you can program that construction to take on kind of dynamic interactive behaviors. So this is what it looks like. It was released commercially in the fall of 2007, so it's been out and about for about 4 years now. And it's been adopted and used by a really interesting group of people. So a group of educators and artists and designers, and most prominently by an interesting group of DIY hobbyists. About over 100,000 boards have now sold, and so there's a significant kind of community out there to look at. To give you a sense of the kinds of stuff people are building, let's show this short video so you can see, what this is all about. And clear crossovers to the Burning Man crowd here. kind of the things that people are building with this kit and what they're doing, and it also starts to give you a sense of the kinds of people who are using this kit. So with that, let me kind of come back to this agenda that I started with, which is that I'm really interested in developing new technologies that give rise to new communities. And once there was this community of people out there using this kit, it became possible to return to that question and see, hey, did I really succeed on that front? Did this really happen? And so what we did about 2 years ago now, in 2010, is I used Mechanical Turk to have people go out and collect information about all of these projects that are out there kind of posted in online and in DIY forums and stuff. So we collected a whole corpus of projects that were made, and also corresponding kind of collection of information about the people who are making these projects. But it seemed like in order to make sense of this data, we would need to compare it to something. So we also collected a similar set of data for a more traditional kind of electronics hobbyist community. So we collected that information for lily pad projects and lily pad adopters, and then also for a traditional electronics hobby community, namely the people who use the quote-unquote traditional Arduino. And this is a collection of their projects and kind of what they look like. And so what came out of that study is that these communities are really similar along several dimensions. So they're kind of from the same places, namely the US and Europe. They're about the same age. But they're really, really different on one dimension, and you can kind of guess what that might be. So when we looked at the gender of these builders, this is what we saw. So these are the two communities of makers, of kind of DIY builders. So the Arduino community, what we found is about 2% of the people who are building and posting Arduino projects online are women. And when we look at the LilyPad community, that dynamic is kind of flipped completely on its head. And what you see is about 65% of those projects are done by women. So coming back around to this question of, did this new technology really give rise to a new community? It seems to, the answer seems to be here, yes. There are lots of interesting questions that you could continue to ask here. The first one that occurred to us is, well, maybe this 65% is just kind of like all of these people, but getting really excited and kind of gathering together in the same space. So are they people who are already doing this kind of stuff, just kind of a critical mass of them, or are they new people? And so to answer that question, we kind of interviewed a subset of these makers, and we came up with some pretty convincing argument that that was not the case, that indeed that a lot of these people who were engaging and building stuff with the LilyPad were completely new to the DIY technology space. So the tool really brought them in and enabled them and encouraged them to participate in this kind of construction of technology. So yeah, we were super psyched. So new communities of kind of technology builders, this is awesome, kind of proved this thesis that this is possible to do, and that if you build appropriate technology, you can really change the cultural dynamics around technology. Yeah, sunshine and but then we kind of started to notice some other patterns more recently. So what happens when that young woman that I just quoted, who's all excited about doing hardware, what happens when she posts her project on a prominent electronics hobbyist blog? Or what happens when her project is featured on a website like Hackaday or like SparkFun? So what often happens looks like this. So why don't you blinky kids take a step back? You seem more focused on fashion. Hey, look at me, my shirt shows when I'm around in school. Outside of the raves and clubs, this is useless junk. Well, maybe I'm just a dinosaur or something, but I just don't get the whole e-textile thing. I've been involved with electronics for a lot of years, and this application is among the most lame that I can recall. I hate e-fashion. It's not electronics. It's crafting, and has no place in the electronics hobby. I've been waiting a long time to say this, but this post has set me off like a rocket. It's too easy, and it takes away from the real electronics hobby. So what we started to see was this intense sense that we had invited people, this new group of people, to participate in this community. We had encouraged them to come and be part of this space. And when they did what we kind of encouraged them to do, when they showed up and they participated, the existing community said, you don't belong here. You are not like us. And in fact, you threaten our identity. You're not welcome here. And so what we're kind of in the midst of doing now is trying to make sense of this space. So make sense of the complex dynamics that are emerging out of kind of developing this new community and having it collide with an existing community. And kind of, there's just lots, I think, of interesting stuff there. We're just starting to kind of collect a corpus of this kind of data. And this, of course, these are a few really inflammatory comments. There's all sorts of more nuanced discourse happening in these forums. So I'll just show you a couple of those while I wrap up. So here are a couple of people kind of responding to that intense negativity in an interesting kind of balanced way. So this person is saying, like, this person, is not like us, that's okay. Like, who cares if it's not like us? There should be space for them here. And maybe even that, this guy's really generous here at the end, maybe engaging people with different perspectives could actually spark kind of new ideas and innovations. This person really starts to talk explicitly about gender, which of course really underlies a lot of this discourse. So this person says, hey, it's not, we wouldn't respond this way just to textiles, we respond this way to kind of anything with this kind of girly aspect to it. And so we should be, self-reflective about that and have that knowledge about ourselves. So I should wrap it up there. And yeah, as I said, we're kind of just looking at these complex ecologies between kind of not only the technology that we built and then sparked a community, but then this complex kind of ecosystem that it joins and becomes a part of. So thank you.
Okay, we have time for maybe 2 questions. Any questions in the back?
For your gender things, were you counting just all Arduino projects or just Arduino fashion type projects?
Yeah, let me go back to that graph here. So we posted kind of tasks on Mechanical Turk that asked people to identify projects that were made either with the Arduino Duemila Nove board, which you see on the left, or with the Arduino LilyPad board, which you see on the right. And those are a snapshot of the 2 collections.
I mean, it just seems like Arduino is useful for lots of things, like cars and whatever, home automation, any of those things, which might be more interesting. I mean, sure, the gender split is different, but there's something about the LilyPad specifically devoted to fashion.
I would strongly push back against that, actually. I think the LilyPad is no, the Arduino is no more, the LilyPad is no less useful than the Arduino. It's identical technology, and in fact, you could do all sorts of things with the LilyPad that you can't do with the Arduino. You can screw this into a wall, for example. You can't do that with the traditional Arduino.
Sometimes these things are just like...
But I guess what I want to push back on a bit is this assumption that this is more like generic or general purpose. Because I don't think that's true. They're just really different. And what you're seeing is that difference is like heavily tied with gender.
So my question with the fashion stuff, it almost seems like you now have fashion electronic parts, like of its own thing. Like that's its own little vertical, and it's always made of this cube, right? Isn't that how it always is? It'd be like, that's not really real. That's not a real thing. And then that's the other thing that you build. It's like, well, yeah, you're right. We're not going to automate your house with that. What we're going to do is we're going to, go down this vertical and really make more different parts like that are more useful and more interesting in that area. And isn't that not super strange, right? I mean, that somebody calls it, cute and not real.
Yeah, no, I definitely resonate with your point. I think there are a lot of opportunities to make similar technologies for lots of different spaces, like gardening and painting and all sorts of things that you could imagine kind of alternative versions of these kinds of needs. For sure.
Okay, probably all the time that we have, but feel free to talk to Leah after the session. So thank you very much, Leah, for